It wasn't a dream. It was a harsh, bitter reality. In the middle of a noisy city, where cars passed without care and people rushed through life with blind eyes, walked a little dog. Alone, every step heavy with fear, every breath filled with questions. Was I ever truly loved? Why was I left behind? This little dog wasn't always like this. There was once a time when he had a home, a yard where the morning sun would warm, his soft fur, laughter of children echoing through the garden, the gentle hands of a human who once called him by name. He belonged, or so he thought. Then, one day, everything changed. A car ride, like many before, except this time. Something felt different. The car slowed. The door opened. A pair of hands pushed him out, the door shut, and the car drove off. He stood there stunned, frozen in confusion. He didn't bark. He didn't move. He just waited. Was this a game? Would they come back? He ran as fast as his little legs could take him after the car, panting, hoping. But it disappeared into the dust of the road, leaving him behind. The sun began to set, and the cold began to creep in. He waited through the night, curled under a bench, eyes fixed on the road, heart full of fear. The next day came, and the one after that. But they never returned. Hunger became a familiar ache. He searched the trash, cans for scraps, sometimes finding stale bread. Other times, just shouting voices and thrown stones, people. Passed, some ignored, some pushed him away with sticks. Children laughed and chased him. Shopkeepers threw water to make him leave. He had become just another stray. No one knew that he once had a name, that he once slept in a warm bed, that he once waited by the door to be hugged. Each night, returned to the same spot, the place where they had left him, hoping, maybe today they would come. But the days blurred into weeks, and hope began to fade. When it rained, he hid beneath parked cars. When it snowed, he shivered under old cardboard. And when he dreamed, still heard that voice calling. His name, he wasn't angry. He didn't know how to be. He was just broken inside, but not entirely, deep within him. There was still a flicker, a small light that whispered, I was abandoned. But I'm not broken, perhaps, just perhaps. That flicker was about to become the fire that would change his. The days rolled on, blending into each other like shadows at dusk. He was still there, alone. Forgotten but not invisible. Someone was watching. It was a cold morning. The streets were still wet from the night's rain. The little dog curled up near a broken fence, his fur damp, his body trembling from across the street. Small eyes peered through a school bus window. A boy no older than 10 noticed the shivering bundle of fur. He pressed his face against the glass. The dog lifted his head weakly. Their eyes met for just a second. That one glance was enough. The boy didn't forget him. All day in school, the image haunted him, that lonely dog, cold, hungry, and afraid. When the school bell rang, the boy didn't rush to the playground like the others. He walked quickly. Pulling his backpack tighter, he had a plan. Back at home, he opened the fridge, grabbed a piece of bread and some leftover chicken. He didn't tell anyone. Quietly, slipped out the door and ran back to the place where he had seen the dog. There he was in the same spot. The dog noticed him and lifted his head. The boy slowly stepped forward, crouching down a few feet away. He placed the food on the ground and backed away. The dog stared, unsure. But the smell, oh, the smell. It was too tempting. Cautiously, he limped forward and took a bite. The boy smiled. He didn't try to touch him. He just sat there, watching, waiting. For the first time in weeks, the dog wasn't being chased or yelled at. He wasn't being ignored. He was being seen. The boy returned the next day. The next he brought food. He brought water. He brought warmth. Not in his hands, but in his heart. Slowly, the dog began to trust. He would wag his tail, just a little. He would inch closer, not quite touching, but no longer hiding. It wasn't much, but it was something. The boy named him Shadow, because he always seemed to appear silently like a shadow at the edge of the street. One day, Shadow followed him, just a few steps. The boy noticed, and stopped walking. He didn't turn around. He just waited. Shadow took another step, and another, and for the first time, since being abandoned, Shadow felt something stir inside him. Not fear, not pain, hope. The boy led him to the gate of his home. He didn't force him inside, he just opened the gate, and stepped away. Shadow stood there, trembling. He looked around. No one was shouting. No one was chasing him. It was quiet. He took a step, then another, and then he was inside. Not a house, not yet a home, but it was warm. It was safe, and on the floor was a soft towel the boy had laid out just for him. Shadow curled up, sure of what this meant, but he wasn't cold, and for the first time in weeks, he slept, not with one eye open, not in fear, but in peace, outside. The sky was turning gold with the setting sun. A new chapter had begun, and though his body was still thin, and his fur still matted, his heart was healing. The morning light crept softly into the room. Shadow still lay curled up on the towel. His eyes slowly opened, and for the first time in weeks, he woke up. Without fear, in front of him, the boy sat quietly, waiting for him to wake, not rushing, not speaking, just waiting as if to say, "I'm still here." Shadow lifted his head, and the boy smiled. He reached out a hand. Shadow flinched. The boy pulled his hand back, gently. No pressure, no force, just presence. And somehow, that silence spoke louder than words ever could. Days began to pass. Shadow started to explore the small yard. The food was always there. The water was clean, and the air, for once, was free from shouts and kicks. But the past, a past still lingered. At night, he would sometimes wake up startled, eyes wide, body trembling. A loud car, a door slamming, a shadow on the wall. It all dragged him back to the moment it was thrown away. Sometimes he whimpered in his sleep. Other times he scratched at the floor or tried to wedge himself into a corner. And when the nightmares were too strong, he would hide under the table breathing. Fast, ears flat. The boy always noticed. He didn't talk much. He didn't try to hug him. He simply came close, sat beside him, softly whispered, "This is your home now, not going anywhere." And slowly, ever so slowly, Shadow began to believe him. One morning, the boy held out his hand again. This time, Shadow looked at it, hesitated, then placed his paw gently on top. No sound, no celebration, but in that single touch, a wall began to fall. It was a tiny gesture, but it meant everything. From that day, Shadow followed the boy a little more. He started wagging his tail just a little when the boy came home. He began to rest near his feet instead of behind the door. One evening, the boy brought him into his room. A soft blanket was laid out next to his bed. Shadow sniffed it, turned around once, then lay down. The boy turned off the light and fell asleep. Shadow didn't move. He just lay there listening to the steady sound of the boy's breath. It wasn't the warmth of the blanket that comforted him. It was the warmth of being wanted. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Scars don't vanish in silence. But when someone sits beside you in your pain without asking you to change, without forcing you to forget, that's when healing begins. Shadow still jumped at loud noises. He still curled up tightly when frightened. But now, wasn't alone. Every time the fear came back, a small hand would stroke his back, and a soft voice would whisper, "You're safe now, Shadow." And somehow, those words worked like magic. Shadow began to run again, not from fear, but for joy. He would follow the boy through the yard, sometimes chasing leaves, sometimes just sitting in the sun. He still carried the past inside him, but now he also carried something else: love, trust, a second chance. And with that, Shadow's broken pieces began to fit back together, one gentle moment at a time. Life had found a gentle rhythm now. Shadow was no longer the trembling Sulift in the dust of a roadside. He walked with confidence now. Beside the boy each morning, he rested under trees in the afternoon sun, and he slept peacefully at night without flinching at shadows. A new home, a new name, and most importantly, a new feeling, belonging. But life isn't always a straight path. Sometimes the past returns. Sometimes a test appears unexpected and sharp. That morning, the sky was heavy with clouds. The wind carried a strange silence. The boy was getting ready for school. Shadow sat by his side, as always. But today, something was different. The boy's father had returned home after a long time, a man with a stern face, a deep voice, and eyes that didn't soften like the boy's did. He saw Shadow, paused, and asked coldly, "What's this stray doing inside the house?" Shadow froze. His tail stopped wagging. His breath caught. That voice, that tone. It was a sound he remembered too well. It was the sound that had once thrown him out of a car and left him alone. The boy quickly stepped in. "He's not a stray anymore. He's Shadow. It's my friend." But the father's expression didn't change. "Keep him outside," he said firmly. "I don't want him in the house." Shadow lowered his head. His paws stiffened. He stepped back slowly inside. Something fragile began to crack again. The boy stood silent, then spoke quietly, but with courage. "If Shadow goes, then I go with him." His voice didn't shake, but his eyes shimmered. For a child, those words carried the weight of a mountain. The father stared this time, not at the dog, but at the boy, and in that moment, he saw something. He saw love. He saw loyalty. He saw the bond between a child and a creature who had once been shattered by the world, but was healing now. Because of love, the silence stretched. Then the father turned away without a word and left the room. The boy knelt beside Shadow. Tears shimmered in his eyes, but a smile broke through them. "No one's going to leave you again, Shadow. I promise." That night, for the first time, Shadow didn't sleep on the floor. He curled up on the boy's bed beside him, not because he had to, but because he felt safe. The next morning, Shadow ran out into the yard, not in fear, but in joy. He chased leaves. He rolled in the grass. He barked at the birds, playfully. And when he returned to the boy's side, he looked up, with a heart full of something new. Not just survival, not just safety, but peace, and a deep, quiet certainty that said, "This is my home. This is my human. This." Time passed. Not in days or months, but in memories. Shadow was no longer just a rescued dog. He had become a part of the family, part of the boy's world, his morning, his laughter, his quiet nights. But something had changed in Shadow too. He no longer looked over his shoulder. He didn't flinch when someone raised a hand. He didn't hide in corners when voices grew loud. He had grown into something stronger, not just healthier, but wiser, deeper. The boy and Shadow would walk in the park every day. Other kids came running, calling his name. He'd let them pet him, play with him, even sit beside him quietly when they were sad. He understood now pain, fear, loneliness. He had lived it. He carried it once, and now he recognized it in others. There was a little girl in the neighborhood, quiet, shy. She never spoke much. But one day she sat beside Shadow on a park bench. She didn't say a word. She just laid her head on his back, and Shadow didn't move. He just stayed, still, warm, present, and the girl smiled. Shadow had become more than just a pet. He was a friend, a silent listener, a reminder that even the broken can heal. One afternoon, a boy fell off his bicycle near the gate. His knees were scraped, tears welling up in his eyes. Before the mother could rush out, Shadow was already there. He licked the boy's face gently, lay down beside him, his tail wagging slowly. The boy stopped crying. It was as if Shadow knew exactly how much pain to carry, how to carry it away. The boy's father, the one who once said keep him outside, now sat on the porch each evening, watching Shadow nap beside his chair. Sometimes he dropped him a piece of biscuit. Other times he simply whispered, "Good boy," no one said when the change happened. No one needed to. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive loudly, it grows slowly. It's like sunlight filtering through trees, and Shadow was that sunlight now? He who was once tossed aside was now someone's comfort, someone's calm, someone's hope. He had become a healer, not with words, but with presence. At night when the boy fell asleep, Shadow curled up beside him, breathing, softly guarding dreams, protecting the peace they both had fought so hard to find. And as the stars blinked above, the world outside still spun with its chaos. But inside that little house, in the corner of that small bed, lay a dog who had once been abandoned, but was never broken. He had found love, and now he gave it back to the world. One quiet